Welcome to the 25th Hour podcast, where successful business owners talk about the magic of creating a 25th hour every day. I'm your host, Lisa Crilly Malice. We've all been there. Your calendar's in great shape, your to-do list is done, you are totally in the zone. All the balls that you have in the air are being easily juggled. And then something changes. And all of a sudden, chaos reigns. This is the podcast that will help you learn to up-level your time management strategies so you can get back in control of your day and make an extra hour, your 25th hour, a reality every day. Today, my guest is Marc Mawhinney. He's a lifelong entrepreneur who helps coaches get more clients without using paid advertising. He achieves this with his coaching programs, the popular Natural Born Coaches podcast, his Facebook group, The Coaching Jungle, and his exclusive print newspaper, Secret Coach Club. He's been a speaker at events like Social Media Marketing World, Entrepreneur City Live, and the TP3X Conference. He frequently makes media appearances and contributes to online publications like entrepreneur.com. Welcome, Marc.
Hi, Lisa. Thanks for having me.
Oh, I am super excited. So before we turn the recording on, Marc and I were catching up, and as the world, as things are in the world, I was the fourth guest on his podcast, which is now at 667, you said?
Yeah, we just passed that magic 666 number, so it was kind of fun. The guest had fun with it. He embraced it. So he's not a Satan worshiper, but he had fun with it.
Yeah, I was even thinking that with you when you mentioned it. So Marc is also the fourth guest on my brand new podcast. So I thought with 667 podcasts, the odds of us being the fourth guest on each other's was kind of crazy, kind of weird.
Yeah, it's I'm not a big woo-woo guy, but we could say it's the universe. You were on my show way back. It was November 20th of 2014. So it was more than a few years ago for sure.
Right. I also am not woo-woo, but I feel like there's something about this that is definitely the universe talking. So Marc, between your podcast and your mastermind and the coaching jungle and your newsletter and your family and your life, you have a lot going on. And I'm wondering, when was a time that you felt like everything was just working and that you were totally in control of your time?
I haven't felt that way yet. So I'll let you know. What's that old saying they say, if you're, and I've heard it with race car drivers and other things, but basically if the car is not shaking, it means you're going too slow, or if you're not in danger of flying off the road, then you're not going fast enough. Not to say that I'm running around like a chicken with my head cut off, because I've gotten much better. Probably since we first did the interview on my podcast in 2014, I've gotten much better at controlling my time, but it's always a work in progress. And this year has been an interesting experiment because there's been certain things I've changed, realizing that, no, this isn't the best use of my time, or this is, driving me nuts and it's not good for my energy or productivity. And then you move on. But it's funny with the title of your podcast and everything else. When some people said to me before, what could you have if you could ask for anything? I'll often say 25 hours in a day. And I there's always more to do. So as a recovering workaholic, I have to be content with not doing everything every single waking second of the day.
So as you shared that you've made some adjustments this year, what are some of those adjustments that you've made?
I've cut down considerably on my media consumption. I think that the news and media should come with a warning label, just like they have for cigarettes and other dangerous things, especially now in 2020, which has been a crazy year. I've noticed a big change. I'm not saying that it was ever all, peace, love, and rainbows on social media and in the news ever. But I did notice a shift in 2016 after the election, and it's just gotten worse since then, from what I've seen. So being a political nut and a political junkie, it's tough for me to say I'm not going to pay attention to anything with politics, but I limit my consumption to 10 minutes a day to scroll some sites that I visit, and then I'm done. I'm not keeping it on. My father drives me nuts. He has CNN on at his house in the background all the time. CNN, constantly negative news. And I've said to him before, like, you got to turn that off. Like, that's a constant drumbeat. If you ever watch, and anyone who watches CNN critically and looks at what they're reporting, it's not healthy. And not just CNN. I think a lot of news is like that. So that was one thing. I restricted my media consumption. Second is with social media. I really tighten that up with it, because you know what it's like with Facebook and some of these others. You think, oh, I'll hop on for 5 minutes and take care of something, and then it turns into 35 minutes. And that's very dangerous as well. So I have set times through the day that I pop in, I do what I have to do. I do my post or respond to my messages or whatever, then I get the heck out of there. So those would be two big things that have changed.
And in my head, I'm laughing because my husband is home right now and the news was on. And at like 2 minutes until the top of the hour before we were supposed to meet, I went out there and I was like, I need you to turn this off. And I please to keep it off all day.
Yeah.
Like, please. I just can't. That constant in the background, that constant is just horrible. When you were talking about social media, so here's something I know that many of my clients try to do and then will struggle is to do exactly what you said. Limit your time, get in, do what you have to do, and then get out. How do you get back out?
I don't use a newsfeed eradicator, that Chrome extension for Facebook. And the only reason I don't is I have certain clients that I support and keep track of on my newsfeed. So I did try that for a while, but for me, it doesn't really work. I probably could do that. It wouldn't be a bad idea for people to install that. So instead of seeing their newsfeed, they would just see a motivational quote. They'd still have access to their inbox on Facebook, but they wouldn't be able to see all the stuff coming through the news feed. So what I do is I find it's just being very conscious and reminding myself, okay, Mark, get in and get the heck out. Don't be drawn in by the little red notifications or any dings or anything like that. Now, I obviously have all notifications off on my phone. That's the worst when you see entrepreneurs that have their Facebook messages and notifications on their phone, and Instagram and email and everything else. That's horrible. I can let you know my schedule, which I stick to pretty well. I pop on, I don't go on until 9 o'clock my time in the morning. My old habit was I wake up 5:30, 6 o'clock, reach over across the bed, check the phone, which is a horrible way to start the day. So 9 a.m. I go on and I do my first post of the day. I check in, make sure, everything's going okay with my Facebook group and other stuff. But then I check the social and email, and then I'm gone. And then I do my next one at noon or noon hour, where I do the same thing. Quick check of social, do what I have to do, email, then I'm gone. I have one mid-afternoon, usually around 3 o'clock my time, 6 o'clock my time, supper time, and then my final check is at 9 p.m. to give myself a few hours before I go to bed where my brain's not racing. So I've told this strategy to some people who aren't in online business, and they're like, oh my God, that's an improvement. That's still, 5 times a day. And for them, that seems like a lot for some people, but for me, that was a big improvement with that. And the other key when you go in is get in and get the heck out. So I call it drive-by posting, just like a drive-by shooting. Get in, post after post, get the heck out of there as quick as possible. So I just finished rereading a few books by Cal Newport, which I recommend to your people if they're struggling with some of these issues. One's called Digital Minimalism, and the other one's called Deep Work. Yes. And those books talk a lot about the big tech companies, what they do to ensnare you. They view that phone as they want it to be like a slot machine in your pocket. The dings and the beeps and everything, you get this dopamine hit, you got to reach for it, and you're constantly checking and scrolling, and you're staying on there as much as possible. Those books will help you break that addiction. And another great book was called 24/6 instead of 24/7. And the author for there takes a 1-day digital detox every week. So
Right. And I have not read Digital Minimalism, but love deep work.
yes.
And as you were talking about how you're spacing out, that was the book that was actually coming into my head was, the idea that for you to create the things that you create, you need to pull apart the time to have some focused energy so that you can do some of your deep work.
Yeah, I just finished reading a book Jay-Z wrote called Decoded, and it's where he basically breaks down his lyrics and part autobiography and everything else. And he said something in that book where, especially for musicians, it's very difficult to be in touch with yourself if you're addicted to technology. You're going to lose yourself in there. And I agree with that. So when I first started doing this, I would literally turn my phone off and put it out in the kitchen in the drawer. And I would swear the darn thing was whispering to me, like, Mark, and I'm trying to like read on the couch and I'm like, no, I don't want to hear this or whatever. So it does take a little bit of time to get used to it. And, but once you do, you feel so much better. I monitor my screen time. I have an iPhone and it's standard in the settings. If you go down, you can see your screen time for the week, and it'll also tell you every Sunday. And it's been dropped down considerably, and I kind of view it as a game when I do check that, because I'm like, oh, this is great, I've cut it down. But some people are easily at 5, 7, 10 hours, even 10 hours a day of screen time, which is crazy. You don't even realize you're on your phone that often.
Right, absolutely. We have 5 minutes here, 5 minutes there, and then all of a sudden it's hours on hours. I use that analogy when we talk about delegating. Like if you just delegated, it's only going to take me 5 minutes. Yeah, but first off, nothing takes 5 minutes. Like we know that. Like, nothing takes actually 5 minutes. And when you add those up, it's hours and hours. So you've talked about how you've made some changes. You've made some shifts this year, and you've reduced your media consumption, and you've reduced screen time and the amount of time you're on your social media platforms. What would be something that you know that you've done throughout the years that has been very beneficial for you? Because I know that you've been able to pull your focus into different areas throughout your career.
Yeah, so the one word that comes to mind when you ask that question would be consistency. So when people ask me, what's your superpower, Mark, or, what could you thank for your success? I always say consistency, which seems kind of like a boring superpower, I guess, but it's really underrated. So another great book, Darren Hardy wrote The Compound Effect, where he says that it's much better to do small, consistent daily activities as opposed to what most people do. They have this burst of energy and motivation, and they do all this stuff for a week or a month, and then they burn out, and then they go MIA. So everything that I've done with my business, the important things, for example, the podcast, like we talked about, Natural Born Coaches, that was a daily show for the first 300 days. And now it's a weekly frequency, which is much more manageable, but that's how it got up to almost 700 episodes in so now about 5.5-ish years. So that podcast was me just showing up, doing all those episodes, not taking any breaks. Like a lot of podcast hosts go into what's called podgatory, where they go MIA, and you don't know if a show's dead or alive. They'll release 10 episodes at once when they launch it. They're all gung-ho. Then you start to notice the frequency goes way down, and then pretty soon they haven't released anything in 2 months. It's like, oh, what's going on? So the podcast is one example of consistency. I've done daily emails to my list since April of 2016. So I've yet to miss a day since then, knock on wood. And I think it's closing in on 1,600 days. And it's become a habit, just like going to the gym. You build up that muscle. So those are just a few examples with it. But I think the big key when it comes to consistency is finding out what you enjoy doing, because if you hate doing it, you're not going to keep doing it. I'm at the moment, I'm not really a big Instagram guy because some people like to take selfies. They're doing the duck lips and all the fancy photos. You don't want to see what my bagel, a picture of my bagel or shake, or me doing duck lip selfies or anything like that. So I don't spend a lot of time in places that aren't big for my business. I focus on the stuff that I really enjoy doing. So you want to make sure that you like what you're doing to ensure consistency. And then it has to work, obviously. So if I'd never gotten any business from my podcast after almost 700 episodes, that's probably a hint that, hey, maybe I shouldn't be doing this. Or same thing goes with emails or so on. So it should obviously work. But the mistake that a lot of coaches and online entrepreneurs make is they'll try something for a week or for maybe a month. They don't get any clients and then they quit it to go on to the next bright, shiny object. And that's not a good way to be either.
Do you have a good feel for so you've talked about the end of, you try it for a week, it doesn't work, you're done. How long? Do you have a feel for how long you hold on to something before you're like, it's just not working?
So I don't want to give the impression that I stick with something till the end of time just because I started it. I have quit some things, but not after a short period of time. So for example, I had a solo podcast called the Marc Mawhinney Show that I did for probably about a year, 50 some weekly episodes. It wasn't, I shouldn't say I didn't enjoy it, but it wasn't fitting into my business plan. I just didn't have the bandwidth for it. Solo shows generally take more work than, say, an interview-based show because you're carrying the load yourself. There's not a guest and everything else. And I was trying to do 2 podcasts and I said, one of them has to go. So instead I decided to start doing some, I do the odd solo episode inside my Natural Born Coaches show, which is usually interview-based. So I killed off my solo podcast. I had an Alexa flash briefing for a long time. I did hundreds of episodes of that. Wasn't feeling it anymore. And I said, no, I don't want to do it. It's becoming more of a chore. And so I'm not afraid to kill something when the time comes. I think it's kind of like a bad relationship. You hit a point where you're like, nah, I'm done. I don't want to put the effort into it. And you move on. So yeah, only you can really decide. You kind of go with your gut there. But I haven't regretted any of those. I think the big key to telling if it's the right move is if you have this feeling of relief, like you have 100 pounds off your shoulders, then all of a sudden it's like, that was probably the right move.
Right. Absolutely. And I think there's as much challenge when you're looking at it from a time management standpoint of investing the time and quitting too soon, as well as getting into that place where you feel like, well, I've got this sunk cost. I've invested my time here, so I need to keep going. And it's being able to hold on to something, whatever that is. And for you, it's that feeling of, I'm not loving it anymore. And a lot of times when I work with clients, we talk about that. That's your zone of genius. Like, you love it and you're super good at it. Stay there and keep moving there. So when we talk about zone of genius, what would you say is your zone of genius? When you look at your businesses and your income streams and all the things that you do, what do you think you do that you are the best at and that you love?
I'd like to say everything, but that's not true. I think I'm really big on, back up. I'm allergic to the usual BS online. As you know, there's a lot of it, a lot of people who are full of it. There's a lot of fluff, filler, people who just aren't delivering any value or what they're promising. So my big maxim, or what I operate on, is I'm trying to do the opposite of them. So I want to be a straight shooter, no BS. I don't want any of that fluff or filler, which people have told me that they appreciate. I also have kind of a strange sense of humor, which seeps into my coaching sessions, into my writing, into my content creation, and so on. So I put my personality out there. People who've been following my stuff for a while know about my dry, probably dad joke, punny sense of humor. I'll post puns and things like that too. But the advantage there is you want to embrace your personality and show that you're unique from all the clones that are out there. There are so many people in the coaching world, I find, that are just literally the exact same. They're so afraid to step out and do anything different. So they hang around in that mushy middle, and they don't want to offend anybody, and they don't want to do anything that's, quote, unprofessional. And they're not going to get business if they just sit on social media posting a motivational quote from someone every hour. That's not going to really move the needle. So I would say that would be the willingness to cut the fluff, shoot straight with people, and a lot of people appreciate it. The ones that don't appreciate it probably aren't the right fit for me anyway, so they can, work with someone else, and that's okay.
I love your punny posts. I probably reshare your puns on my personal feed more than anything else out there. I look at that and I'm like, oh, I get it. That's funny. So thank you. Don't stop that. I appreciate that. When you talk about working with your clients and being authentic and fighting through the BS and just saying, look, here's how it is. And one of your emails at one point in time said something like, if you think you're going to have a launch and make, $1 bazillion in 4 minutes, like that's not true, regardless of what you see online, read online. What is it that you help your clients with?
Well, my big thing's organic strategy. So it's helping coaches get more clients without paid ads. And that comes from my background. When I started my coaching business, I was a few years out from a messy business closure in the real estate world. So I didn't have access to the capital that I once had back in real estate, which at the time seemed like a disadvantage. Back in early 2014, I thought, oh man, I wish I had, the money to put into, expensive ads and campaigns and all this stuff. But it was actually a blessing in disguise because it forced me to roll up my sleeves and to put that work in, again, organically, not paid. And it really helped me hone my message as well. So the mistake I see a lot of coaches make, or I should say the problem, is let's say someone coming from corporate, they've got a nice little war chest, they've got a package or something that they got from their corporate gig, and they think this is great. I got $50,000. I'm going to be able to just dump into, ads and everything. I'll hire this guru, this expert, and everything will be great. And then they don't get any or many results from it. And they're not used to creating a message because they're just doing just that ad. They're hoping that ads are going to do the work for them. And that's not good either. And I've seen a lot of people be hurt that way. So my whole thing is I say be the Sam Phillips of the coaching industry. And Sam Phillips is a person who discovered Elvis Presley, basically, and got Elvis from being an unknown milk driver, with a funny haircut, acne, strange name, to become the king of rock and roll, or at least got him started. And I see myself doing the same thing with coaches. There's a lot of coaches who could do really well if they were known or had the client base to do that, but they're just unknown at the moment. I want to get them out there and get them known.
And so without sharing your trade secrets, what's one tip you could get someone who's listening right now, whether they be a coach or someone in the service-based profession, on helping them get more attention organically?
Well, I think it's really important as a foundation that people know what you do. I know it sounds like common sense. I have something that I call a barbecue pitch. You're on my email list, so you probably heard me talk about it, Lisa. But in a nutshell, a barbecue pitch is if you and I are at a backyard barbecue, assuming our government allows us to be in the same backyard at a time, which I wish that was a joke, but that's probably pretty serious, but we could do a whole episode on that. Assuming we're allowed to meet neighbors and have a barbecue, we met each other and we got done dispensing pleasantries and talking about the weather or whatever, and I said, so Lisa, what do you do? Your barbecue pitch is your answer to that question, and ideally it should be a short 1 sentence, 2 sentences max that will let me know exactly what you do. Now, what do most coaches or online entrepreneurs do in that situation? They would either look at the person like a deer caught in headlights, or they would launch into a 5-minute long rambling, I say a speech like from Mr. Smith Goes to Washington when he did a 24-hour filibuster or whatever. And that would have me looking elsewhere in the yard to escape, right? So I gave mine earlier in this interview when I said I help coaches get more clients without paid ads. That gives people a pretty good idea what I do. Now, to the layman, they might look and say, okay, what do you mean by coaches, or something like that? Or they could ask some follow-up questions, but it's pretty clear. It's more specific than me just saying I help people. I'm trying to think of an example I see a lot in the coaching world, like I help people achieve their passion, or something that's very general with it. And I could probably go even further with it, but at the very least, I would go that way so people know that, hey, I work only with coaches, helping them getting clients, and it's not paid ads, it's organic, it's free type stuff that they could do. So it's very clear that way. And that would be a tip that I would give, because if you don't know that, you can't answer it. How can people know if they should hire you or if they can refer people to you if you don't even know exactly what you do?
Right. Exactly. As I'm thinking through conversations I've had with people not at barbecues recently, but networking events, tell me what you do. And you're like, I don't know what you just said to me. I want to help refer you. You seem like a great person. I don't know what you said. Can't figure it out. So we've talked about some of the things that have gone well, like being able to consistency and minimizing your screen time and your social media time and your time listening to the news. Oh yeah, the news. And I'm wondering, where, if anywhere, are you finding a struggle with your time?
I mentioned earlier that I still have a ways to go, because I find myself sometimes slipping up and saying, well, good example. If I'm doing, let's say, a Facebook Live on Facebook that falls outside of the times that I go on there, there's that temptation to then check notifications or to check, or sometimes if I'm not supposed to check after 9 o'clock, it's 10 o'clock. I'm thinking, well, maybe I'll pop in and see if so-and-so messaged me back or what's going on with the Facebook group. And so the struggle is very real with smartphone addiction. I know people laugh because when we hear addiction, you think of like heroin or crack cocaine or something like that, or opiates. You're not thinking of a phone. It's like, it's a phone, phones are great. I can never get rid of my phone. Don't get me wrong. I'm not suggesting that, but I do think that, down the road, we're going to really realize the pitfalls and that have come from it. And we're probably already seeing it with kids that are living on screens. And now the ones that grew up with these things are into college and they're having a lot more mental issues and anxiety and all this other stuff because they grew up on screens. So I might suspect that let's say 40, 50 years down the road, it'll probably have the same stigma as, smoking back in the day when you had doctors endorsing, cigarette brands and stuff, which sounds crazy. But back then it was just, there was actually some people saying that no, smoking's good for you was even being said or whatever. Now we're like, no, it's not good for you. I think it's gonna be the same with smartphones decades down the road, that we look back and think, oh my God, how did we let our kids spend that much time on them? Or how did we spend that much time on them? Because they're absolutely horrible for when it comes to concentration, for getting into flow. You would know the stats more than I, where you're in that world, but I think it's 21, 22 minutes it takes to recover from a distraction and try to get back into that state of flow. And smartphones are, if they're always around us, even if they're not dinging, they're in our mind. Right now, mine's sitting over here and it's off. So it's not going to ding or whatever, but it's also, I should probably have this in my trunk of my vehicle or something outside, away. So that's a long rambling answer for it. But I would say that I still have some places to improve with it. And I'm guessing most people do as well.
I was just going to say that is one of the number one things that when I work with clients that comes up, and it may not be what comes up initially, but during our time together, that is exactly what comes up. And I have had clients, I've asked them to put their phone in their trunk. And so it's so funny when you said I should probably put that in my car. I will ask them, I said, it's about building the structure that you can follow instead of forcing yourself to do something. And I said, you are struggling to leave the phone alone. So put it in a place that is so inconvenient that you're not going to go out and get it. So you are exactly right. You are right in there with many of the people that I work with. And for those who are interested in the stat that Mark was pulling up about getting back in the flow, it was a study done at University of California, Irvine, and it is 23 minutes and 15 seconds that it takes you when you are in the flow, you get interrupted to get back in the flow again. And I'll put that in the show notes because that's one of my favorite stats, Mark. Thanks for bringing that one
there
up.
we go. I was off by a minute or two.
I know. I was like, man, that's really good for someone who doesn't do that for a living. You came amazingly close to it.
I find it funny with coaches and online entrepreneurs because the question sometimes comes out, how many hours a week are you working? And they like to say, oh, I work 80 hours a week or 100 hours a week or, 90 hours, whatever. And I would guess if there was a person following them with a stopwatch and tracking it right down, that they would not be working or at least be productive anywhere close to that with it, because how much of the day is lost for this just junk crap activities that aren't moving the needle for their business. And that's something that I'm getting very, very clear on is this a best use of my time right now? I'm not saying I was ever a Candy Crush or Farmville type player or whatever, but it doesn't have to be a colorful game app like that. It could be news sites. It could be sports blogs. Could be texting with friends. I have a few friends that like to text, and sometimes I'll have my phone off for an hour for a call. I turn it back on, and literally 47 or 52 notifications in that group chat from the texts over. And, that's fine. They can talk all they want, but I'm like, do I really need to be following that thread right there? No, probably not. Yeah.
My husband's family, they do this family group tests, and I think, do none of you work? Is there anyone who's actually working? And so I have muted them. The other thing I find that's similar to that is reply all.
Yeah.
If I'm on an email that's reply all, I will wait almost a full day before I even get in, because most of the time, whatever it is, they figured it out on their own. They didn't need me anyway. If I could just wait long enough.
I can tell you my energy level when I started being better with the phone and technology and stuff and my mood as well was so much higher than before. And if you're spending your day just on social media, which is a real dumpster fire, it's not going to get any better before the US election. Not to blame you guys. I'm in Canada, but we're still,
but
you can't hide. Yeah.
Sorry.
You can't hide from it anywhere. You could be on some friggin' island in the middle of nowhere, and you're still gonna, people are gonna either love or hate Trump and be talking about it all the time. But it seeps into your brain, and it's almost like people look and say, okay, media, tell me what should I be pissed off at today? Oh, okay, it's kids in cages at the border. I'm going to spend the week. This is my big issue. And then they've moved on, and then it's COVID for months, or it's race riots or whatever. And it's both sides. It's not one side or the other that I think everybody gets trapped in this. But I don't know. I asked a question on social media once where I said, has anyone ever had their mind changed from someone on social media in a debate?
I love that post.
Yeah, it's very rare. I don't know if it doesn't happen often. Certainly, it just seems like people will cheer the people they agree with. They'll boo and hiss at the people they disagree with, and there's no progress whatsoever. So I've gotten much better at scrolling past the posts that could trigger me, that I'm like, this person's a real idiot and they're wrong. I think they're wrong. Now I'm just like, I don't need to comment on here. Or the people that pop their heads out. I don't know if you've seen the meme with the Pennywise the clown from It popping his head out of the sewer or whatever. And the meme said something like, those people on Facebook that you only comment negatively on posts or whatever. That's the only time you see them is when they're crapping on your post. Those people, I just ignore them. And I kind of like that because they're looking for a reaction. So when you don't answer them, they're like, oh, what's going on? I'm looking for a reaction.
Yeah, it's, when you were saying about how, amazingly up to date on our U.S. politics. Thank you for that. I know that I am not as up to date on what's going on in Canada, but you are amazingly up to date on what's happening here in the U.S. But as you're talking about, there's always something that people will be divisive on. So right now in Cleveland, the conversation is around whether or not we're going to change the name of the Cleveland Indians, and whether or not that is racist or unsympathetic or whatever the case may be. And I don't know that I would have thought a year ago that would even be a conversation.
Yeah.
So it's interesting how does seem to be something coming up.
Yeah, people are really on edge. I went to a movie just to dispel the myth that all Canadians are polite. I went to a movie on the weekend with my girlfriend, and the worker threw a bag of candy at us. Basically, she was annoyed when she was ringing us in. You could tell, and she was huffing and puffing, and I didn't know what was going on. I thought I was being pranked. I was going to look for like Ashton Kutcher or whatever, because I'm like, did I say something? I don't think I come across as a hostile guy. I was just
Right.
like this. She must have been having a bad day, or she didn't like wearing her mask or whatever, and she chucks a bag of Sour Patch candies, at us or whatever. And just, it ended up escalating into a complaint to the manager, and her yelling as we left. I said, I'm not, going to be going here. But it's like that on social media every day with everyone. They're throwing virtual stuff at people, and it's just a fighting. It's just a negative cesspool with it. So, and it makes it much worse even with when you have a screen in between, the keyboard warriors and stuff. Think, well, I'm never going to see Lisa. She lives, thousands of miles away, so I can, attack her personally, because they may not do that if they're standing right next to you, but where it's online. So I'm all for social media. I don't want to give the impression that it's all bad, because it has really built my business, and I wouldn't give it up. But I am very conscious of the ills of it.
Right. And you're very diligent about how you choose to spend your time when on there, and what you choose to post and share. So you had mentioned something at the very beginning about the name of the podcast, about if you could wave a magic wand, you would want that 25th hour. And I'm wondering, when you get that 25th hour, because you're doing all these things that help you hone in on what you do best, what do you want to do with that extra hour each day?
I already get a lot of reading done. And that's one thing that's happened with these changes. I've been reading even more than usual, like crazy. What I would do is devote that hour to something completely different than I normally do. So for example, one thing I've started picking up on again, which I used to do a lot as a kid, is just draw, like sketch, and I have a sketchbook, and I did a little bit of it there last week, and I really enjoyed it. So my issue is turning off my brain off, business mind off. Mm-hmm. So what'll happen is I say, okay, I'm going to shut down the phone, the laptop, everything else, laying on the couch, and then I'm either reading a business book. I just finished watching a great movie, Ford versus Ferrari. Have you seen that one? Yeah, excellent movie. I have a moleskin journal out as I'm watching it to take notes for ideas for blog posts from it, or emails, or lessons from it. And I thought, this is crazy, Mark. Just enjoy the friggin' movie.
Right, just watch the movie, be in the moment.
Yeah, you don't always have to have the business brain on. So to answer your question, yeah, I would take that hour for something completely off the grid that's not business related. Probably art, with drawing, or maybe it'd be writing fiction. Instead of writing in the business with the business model. Mm-hmm. That's another option too.
Right. To help. And that helps when you're able to do that, it helps tap into the other side of your brain, which then makes you more productive on, not that I'm looking to give you a reason to be more productive and raise your business up anymore. However, when you're flipping to that other side, it does have that effect.
Well, and I mentioned the book by Jay-Z earlier. Mm-hmm. I'm probably the furthest away from his target market. I'm like the whitest, Canadian guy. I'm not really into hip hop. I don't know the slang or anything else like that. But I got that book because I had an audio book of another book on Jay-Z. And obviously the guy's a real smart business person. He's a billionaire. He's, came up from the streets, and now he's swimming in gold and living the life. A billionaire, and just real smart business person. So I got Decoded just to kind of get inside his brain to see how he creates his songs and his lyrics, and he's got all the the poetry really. And I got a lot from that book, even though it's not my typical business book. The same thing happened with a couple different ones. Kurt Cobain has journals. It's copies of his journal pages, basically, so you can get inside his head, which at times is dark, but you see like his journal entries, his sketches, everything else. And I pulled stuff from there around content creation. John Lennon letters, that's another book that I read. So it seems like lately I'm kind of, even though I'm not a musician or anything like that, I do pull a lot from those type people. They're not business people, but you can learn a lot from them.
Yeah. Oh, thank you. I love that. And what kind of sketching do you do? Just out of curiosity.
Well, I just earned brownie points because I sketched my girlfriend and I gave it to
Woo!
her with a little note on the back, and she really liked it. She framed it, and she was really. I thought, wow, I need to do this more often. This is better than buying flowers, chocolate, or whatever. I'll just sketch. So yeah, I took an hour, sketched a picture that I'd had of her, and bang, there we go. I sketched one. My son, he just turned 12, but a few years ago, he's into the or was into the show Gravity Falls. I don't know. Any parents might recognize it because it was a show on for a few seasons and stuff. So I sketched one of the drawings from the show, something I pulled up from Google Images or whatever, and he really liked that. He's kept that. He has it still, and he got a kick out of it. So I'm, sometimes I'll just sketch something like comic book character, Superman, Batman, something like that. I'm not going to be in any museums or art exhibits or anything like that anytime soon. It's just more to, again, turn the business brain off, and you're doing something with your hands that isn't like, journaling or something different. And I like it. Yeah, I think you're right. It taps into that creative side. Then when you go back to business stuff, you've got all these ideas and you're thinking of things differently.
Yeah, it's almost like that. People say, oh, I get my best ideas in the shower.
Yeah.
Well, you get your best ideas in the shower because there's not a lot else to do you're in the shower and your brain has turned off, and the same thing happens. I use photography, and again, you're probably never going to see my stuff hanging in a major art museum, and I take pictures of flowers. They don't move. It's like a really low barrier of entry for me. They're already pretty, but it relaxes me because it takes I tried drawing, and there was that whole, do you even know what I drew? I can't even tell what that is. Like, it's a sticks figure. And so I had a lot of that out myself, looking at it critically. And so when I do pictures of flowers, you already have, whether you're good or not, there's already something beautiful there. And that helps me then turn my brain off, because I'm similar to you, left to its own devices, that brain will just run all day, every day.
Yeah, I hate that feeling when you feel like you're on 24/7. And that was the issue I was having with social media, email, and everything else. And I'm thinking the whole reason that I'm doing an online business, I don't mind working. I love being busy. I always hated it back in my past life. I was in real estate for almost a decade right out of university. And I always felt like I was on, the phone's to your ear 24/7. You can never take any time off. You feel like you're in a fishbowl. If you're going to a local store to get a carton of milk, you feel like you got to wear a suit in case you bump into a client back in that life. And one of the things I like with coaching versus real estate is that flexibility with it. But I'm like, it's not really flexibility if your phone, you have to bring your phone into the bathroom with you or into the kitchen. If you go wherever you go, you need to have that phone and you have to answer people. And it's just not a good way to do it. So I'm getting much better at drawing a line between the two. And I realize I'm not my business. I don't want to be tied in too tight to my business because I think that's dangerous for your sanity.
Right. Absolutely. And, one of the things when I work with clients, one of the books we reference all the time is The Productivity Project with Chris Bailey. And he talks about working 80 hours a week versus working 20 hours a week and what the difference in output is. And it's not that much.
No.
And being able to say, yeah, here are my boundaries. Here's where I'm working. Here's where I'm not. Like you had alluded to earlier, you talked to coaches. How long do you work? Oh, yeah, 70, 80, 90, 100 hours a week. No, how long are you actually working? And being able to pull that tighter.
Yeah, well, really weird thing. This just happened this morning. So that Ford versus Ferrari movie I told you about, I rented it last night digitally. So I have it for 48 hours. Watched half of it last night. This morning I thought, you know what? This is my first call of the day. We're recording this at noon hour my time, so I'm going to take an hour to finish that movie, which is a lot of entrepreneurs wouldn't take time off on a weekday morning to watch a movie. They think, well, I'll wait till night, and didn't have my phone, anything else with me, just enjoyed the movie. When I was getting ready for this appointment, got my phone, looked down, I got a new payment from a new client in on PayPal or whatever. And I find that happens a lot is when I'm not pushing and when I just detach from any outcome, get away from business or whatever, money comes rolling in. And again, I'm not a woo-woo type guy, but I think there could be something there. I think if you're pushing too hard, energetically, maybe it's coming across that, oh, okay, you're stressing. And that's a great book, actually, The Energy of Money, by the way. That's another one that I read recently.
That's a great book.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it's a really interesting one. So it reminds me of, I'll tell a really quick story to emphasize this. My favorite baseball team is the Toronto Blue Jays. And I'm a really big, sorry if you're an Indians fan or whatever, but the Jays, what year was it? 2015. They got back to the playoffs for the first time since 1993. So it had been like 22 years since the Canadian team was in the playoffs. Really big deal. The whole country was really pumped up because we had kind of moved on from baseball. We were getting into, we're a hockey country. Right. I'm a baseball fan, probably more than hockey. So we were all excited. And the first game that fall, they're playing the Texas Rangers. Jays are back in the playoffs. They're playing at Rogers Center in Toronto. Really big deal. And this team was pretty much unbeatable the second half of that season. Like I was always surprised when they lost because they're playing so well that if they lose a game, oh my God, what's going on? They lost the game. And so we're thinking this is going to be easy. They're going to, kill the Rangers. And I could tell when the game started, when they're doing the national anthems and announcing the players and stuff like that, that they just seemed different. They were very tight. This was a team that wasn't afraid to joke around and loose, have fun and everything. And it looked like they all had something like crammed up their behinds standing on the baseline when they're doing the announcements. And so, okay, I'm like, it seemed a little bit uptight, but that's fine. They got playing the game and they were absolutely brutal. It was like the friggin' bad news bears. Like they were making stupid errors, dropping balls, and it was horrible. And they got their butts kicked. And that was a best of 5 series. They lost the first 2 games against the Rangers because they put so much pressure on their shoulders. Down 2-0 against a major league team in a best of 5 series. You have to win 3 straight games or you're done. So we all basically, the whole country said, well, they're done. That was fun for, short playoff. But anyways, so I wasn't clearing space off on my mantle for any, trophies or anything or memorabilia for the Jays playoff that year. So what had happened, though, was after the first 2 games, the team basically, I think, probably realized they're playing way too tight. But they thought, well, we're probably going home anyways. The season's over. So let's just have fun, relax, and just play ball and play out the series. And they ended up, make a long story short, winning 3 straight games and getting the Rangers out of there. That was the one for any baseball fans. Jose Batista had the bat flip that ticked off all the Texas fans and had me jumping all over like I was 10 years old again. It was great. But that's what I took from that is I always remind myself not to be like the Toronto Blue Jays if I'm playing too tight. And you have to play loose and not get too serious with it, or you're not always going to get the results. You're kind of blocking it. And I think that's an important lesson for entrepreneurs too, to remember to have fun, because people do pick up on that. And don't get too drawn to an outcome. If you do a sales call, it doesn't work out, you got to put that out of your mind and then get ready for the next one. It's not the end of the world. There's lots of ups and downs, and you have to be prepared to move past them.
Right. Absolutely. And were 2 of those games on the road? Or was one of the last 3 on the road?
I want to say the first 2 games were in Toronto. I think the last 2 games were so the next 2 games, 3 and 4 were in Texas. And I think game 5 went to Toronto because Toronto had the better record. So
they won 2. They won 2
on the road, which was tough. Yeah. Yeah, and then they had the bat flip, which everyone got into a fight, and there was all these beer cans on the field and everything else and all that. It was a lot of fun.
Yes, the bat flip heard around the world. Absolutely.
Baseball is funny, yeah. It's got a lot of weird little rituals. You can't stare too long at a home run. Like if you're half a second too long, that's disrespectful. You're going to get a baseball to the head next time you're up or whatever. So it's very old-fashioned. It's got these unwritten rules that other people would think, oh, this is kind of – other fans of other sports would be like, this is silly, but
Right. All those unwritten rules, which is why I think part of the reason they came out with that new slogan, just let them play, last year. That was the slogan for the younger kids coming up, just let them play. As we talk about staying loose and being in the moment and making it easier for clients to, magically drop PayPal into your email, how do potential clients get a hold of you?
So there's a few ways. I'm really busy inside my Facebook group when I'm online. I'm popping in there in the day. But that's at coachingjungle.com. So there's almost 20,000 coaches in there, lots of conversation. And if you're a coach or an aspiring coach or interested in coaching, then you can check out that group. My site for the podcast is naturalborncoaches.com. You can check out, we've covered pretty much any topic imaginable for coaches over the years, but naturalborncoaches.com. And finally, marc.coach is my site with showing how I help people. And that's Marc with a C. So marc.coach.
And are there any clients or potential clients that you know right off the bat would not be a good fit? If someone's listening right now and we know that they're not a good fit, what would that look like?
Communists wouldn't be, because I'm a capitalist and I don't make any bones about it. I can deal with socialists as long as they're not too nutty. If someone hates money and they think anyone who makes money is evil and the thing should be burnt down or whatever, we're probably not going to work together. One of my clients, funny story, I don't always talk politics with clients, obviously, but we're on a call once and she's in California and she took a sip of coffee as we're on our call. It was a video call. And I caught a glimpse of a Bernie Sanders mug. And I said, oh God, I said, was that a Bernie Sanders mug? And she kind of laughed like sheepishly, but actually we got along great. So I won't say that I can't work with socialist or whatever, but if somebody hates anyone that makes money and thinks making money is evil, we're probably not a good fit.
It's good to know. So that those of you who are watching right now who hate making money, do not hop into Marc's Facebook group, because it's not your place. It's all about making sure that you can attract your tribe and repel those who are not your tribe, and people who don't want to make money are not your tribe. So I thank you so much for your time today. If those of you who are watching and listening, if you enjoyed today's podcast and you would like to create the 25th hour in your day, check out a 2-minute quiz at impactedstrategies.com/quiz. It'll give you lots of ideas and strategies for you to go ahead and figure out how you can create the 25th hour in your day every day.